You ever get told you don't belong somewhere? When your great-great-grandfather built the damn place, I've lived on this land my entire life. Hell, my blood is soaked into this soil, same as the rain. It's not just property to me. It's legacy. A crooked old sign at the end of the gravel road reads, Harper's Hill, named after my family. Most people around here don't even know that. They drive past it on their way to the new Starbucks across town, where cornfields used to be. But this hill, these acres of rough grass, rusted fences, and sun-bleached barns, this is where it all started. My great-great-grandfather, Thomas Harper, helped lay the foundation stones for this town back in the 1800s. He cleared the first fields, built the first schoolhouse, and even donated the land where the original courthouse still stands. The roads folks drive on today, built on paths first carved out by wagon wheels from our family farm. My grandfather used to tell me stories about how the Harpers would let passing travelers rest on the property during the Dust Bowl, and how, during hard winters, we were the ones who fed half the valley from our root cellar. We weren't rich, but we were the backbone. Now, the old homestead may look a little worn down. Okay, a lot worn down. The house leans into the wind like an old man who's been through too many winters. The barn's roof has more holes than wood, but it's mine. Inherited it after my dad passed last spring. I left the city job behind and came home. Didn't want to deal with rush hours or office politics anymore. Just me, a wood-burning stove, a couple of chickens, and more peace than I ever found behind. A desk. Then they showed up. Across the southern ridge on land that used to be scrub brush and rocks, a new development sprang up like weeds after a summer storm. Glossy little houses all painted the same shade of beige. Driveways filled with SUVs that had never seen a dirt road in their lives. A homeowners association. The kind of place where they fine you if your grass is an inch too tall or if your mailbox is aesthetically disruptive. They paved over a patch of prairie and called it Maple Grove Estates. The trees aren't even maples. At first I didn't mind. They were just noisy neighbors. I could hear the leaf blowers and kids screaming from time to time, but nothing I couldn't drown out with the buzz of a chainsaw or the cluck of the hens. One of their board members tried to wave at me once. I nodded back, kept it cordial. I figured, let them play suburbia in the sticks. Ain't my business. But I should have known better. The way they eyed my land from across the fence line, like it offended them just by existing. The way they paused their dog walks whenever they reached the edge of my property, whispering and shaking their heads. I could feel it. That quiet judgment that city folk bring when they pretend to go country without ever respecting it. At first I thought they were just noisy neighbors. I didn't know they were coming for everything. It started with a letter. Not from the county. Not from the bank, no, from the damned HOA. Cream-colored envelope with that snooty gold emblem stamped in the corner. Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. Inside was a printed notice titled Community Standards. Violation, non-conforming structures. Beneath that, in tight passive-aggressive legalese, it claimed my barn, a hand-built 100-year-old structure, was in visual disrepair and not up to neighborhood aesthetic. I remember holding that letter, standing in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee thinking, they can't be serious. I don't even live in their neighborhood. My land sits outside their property lines. But that didn't seem to matter to them. A few days later, I got another letter, this time about my gravel driveway. Apparently, it was detrimental to community uniformity. Then came the one about my solar panels. They were unapproved installations and an unsightly deviation from community energy standards. I laughed out loud when I read that one. Lady, I said out loud to no one, I don't even have mail service from your HOA. You're 2 parcels away. That's when I met her. Linda Masterson, HOA president and queen of artificial charm. She showed up on my property without so much as a knock. Drove right up past my fence line in her silver Lexus SUV, which looked hilariously out of place surrounded by chickens and mud. She got out wearing those wraparound sunglasses and a white tennis outfit, like she was headed to some gated spa retreat instead of a confrontation in the middle of cow country. She had a clipboard in one hand, a tablet in the other, and a forced smile that twitched like it hadn't been used for anything real in years. "Hi there," she said, stepping over a patch of gravel like it might infect her sneakers. "I'm Linda Masterson, president of the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. I just wanted to swing by and have a quick chat about some concerns from our community." I leaned on the fence post, arms crossed. "Didn't realize your community stretched out this far." She chuckled like we were old friends. "Well, we believe in maintaining certain standards across adjacent properties. Your land is technically visible from several of our premium lots, and well, some of our residents have voiced concerns. There's a general lack of cohesion." "Cohesion?" I repeated. "Yes," she said, gesturing toward my barn with her tablet. "That structure is charming, I suppose, but a bit of an eyesore from a real estate perspective. And the chickens, well, we typically don't allow livestock within the community." I blinked. "Good thing I'm not in your community, then." Her smile dropped a notch. "Be that as it may, we're hoping you'll consider making some adjustments. A paved driveway, perhaps. A fence more in line with suburban standards. And maybe removing the, solar panels? They're quite reflective. You're on private property," I said calmly. "You need to leave." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "I'm not under your jurisdiction. I never signed anything. Your HOA means jack out here. So you and your clipboard can get back in that overpriced roller skate and drive back to whatever Stepford house you crawled out of." That knocked the Botox right out of her face. She clamped her mouth shut, spun around, and stomped back to her SUV, her tennis shoes crunching across the gravel like a pack of angry rats. I watched her drive off without another word. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I came home from the hardware store and found a paper flapping in the wind, nailed right to my gate. A red-stamped notice of eviction, in all caps, with the Maple Grove HOA seal at the bottom. I stood there staring at it, trying to comprehend the absurdity. They weren't just complaining now. They were declaring war. The notice claimed I was illegally occupying communal property and that my residence was scheduled for mandatory removal due to non-compliance with HOA bylaws. I laughed, loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so stupid. It had to be a prank, except it wasn't. I took that paper down, marched back into my house, and sat at my father's old desk. I laid the letter out next to my deed, my family's deed, complete with county stamps going back 5 generations. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about complaints. This wasn't about property values or fences or damn chickens. This was about control. They didn't want me to conform, they wanted me gone. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt since my dad's funeral. Righteous anger. Because these people had no idea whose land they were trying to steal, but they were about to find out. I couldn't stop staring at that eviction notice. It sat on my kitchen table like a snake coiled around a ticking clock, daring me to ignore. But how the hell could a private neighborhood group even try to evict someone from their own land? Land that had been in my family for nearly 150 years. My name was on the deed. I paid my property taxes. I didn't owe a cent to a soul. What right did they have? I needed answers. So I drove down to Town Hall, the same red brick building my great-grandfather helped build with his bare hands. The place still smelled like old paper and fresh coffee, the way it always had. I went straight to the zoning office and asked to see any records filed involving my parcel. The clerk raised an eyebrow but pulled out a manila folder, then clicked around on her desktop. That's when I saw it. A formal complaint filed by the Maple Grove Estates HOA. Nuisance occupancy and non-conformance to residential standards. They claimed my residence was an unauthorized dwelling constructed on designated community green space. Green space? That land hadn't changed hands in a century. I felt my jaw tighten as I flipped through their documents. Buried in them attachments was a boundary map, dated just 2 months ago. And sure enough, it had been edited, subtly. My land was now partially shaded green and labeled Future Community Recreation Area, Phase 3. I damn near choked on my own spit. They were trying to rezone my land, without even talking to me. Worse, they were claiming I was squatting on land that had been in my family since before the town had paved roads. They can't do this, I muttered. The clerk gave me a sympathetic look. They've been aggressive lately, she said. This isn't the first complaint they've filed that raised eyebrows. I left town hall feeling like the world had flipped sideways. Everything my dad warned me about was happening. I could still hear his voice, low and gravelly, like the slow rumble of a storm rolling in. One day, developers will try to steal what's ours. They'll smile while they do it too. Don't ever let them. At the time, I thought he was just being paranoid. Too many fights with city officials, too many rumors of land grabs and backdoor deals. But now, I was standing in the middle of one. They wanted my land for their expansion. Phase 3 of their cookie-cutter empire. Probably wanted to bulldoze my barn, rip up the garden, and slap down a cul-de-sac with a splash pad. Maybe a welcome to Maple Grove Park sign where my dad's ashes were scattered under the old oak tree, over my dead body. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the porch, shotgun across my lap, not because I thought they'd come that night, but because it felt like the right thing to do. Like my father was sitting there beside me in the dark saying, "They don't know who they're dealing with, son." And he was right. They thought I was just some backwoods holdout with a chicken coop and no lawyer. But they'd made one. Critical mistake. They thought I'd roll over. They thought I'd let them take what generations of my family had bled and worked for. They thought wrong. So I started planning. Digging. Not just into my land records, but into theirs. I knew if they were bold enough to fake a map, they were probably sloppy enough to leave a trail. And when I found it, I was going to make damn sure the whole town saw it. The county archive was colder than I remembered. Long rows of metal shelves, humming under flickering fluorescent lights, the air thick with dust and the slow hum of history. I hadn't been down there since I was a kid, tagging along with my dad while he researched boundary lines and soil surveys. Back then, I didn't care much. Now, I was hunting for a weapon, proof that my family's legacy still carried weight. And I found it. Box number 172. Town of Fairgrove Founding Records. Inside, on yellowed parchment with faded ink, was the original township charter, dated 1873, signed by none other than Thomas Harper, my great-great-grandfather. My hand shook a little as I turned the pages, tracing the neat cursive. He'd donated the land that became the courthouse square, the school, even the church lot. But that wasn't all. Attached was an old survey map, annotated in pencil. Next to several parcels, including the one I lived on, was a series of notations. Easement retained, Harper family line. And even more curious. Protective. Covenant. No commercial or subdivided residential development without direct consent from Harper descendants. I sat back in my chair, heart hammering in my chest. They'd never transferred those rights, never nullified them. No court, no council, no deal had ever amended the original deed language. The land the HOA was trying to bully their way onto was still under our thumb, they just didn't know it. And the real kicker? The parcel Linda Masterson's McMansion sat on used to be part of the old Harper family orchard. I pulled up the most recent plot maps and cross-referenced them against the original. Sure enough, a big chunk of Phase 1, including Linda's property, was carved straight out of land we'd once farmed. The protective covenant covered my emas too. Technically, if you wanted to legally build on that land, a Harper descendant had to sign off. Guess who hadn't? By the time I got home, I was already dialing numbers. I found a land use attorney, 2 towns over, a guy named Russell Clay with a reputation for loving a good fight, especially if it involved sticking it to overreaching HOAs. I met him the next morning, handed him everything. The founding documents, the original survey, the protective covenant, the new boundary map with the fraudulent edits. Russell just shook his head and whistled low. They really screwed the pooch. On this one, didn't they? Oh, they've barely gotten started. I said, let's make sure they regret it. Within a week, Russell had filed a high legal injunction with the county court. halting all Maple Grove Estates Phase 3 development due to the violation of historical covenants and unlawful rezoning efforts. Then came the cease and desist letters X, mailed certified to every member of the HOA board, each one citing legal code, covenant restrictions, and potential fraud charges if they didn't immediately back off. But I wasn't just going to play this out in court. No, I wanted the whole damn town to see what these people were up to. So I posted a photo of the fake eviction notice to Reddit, or Entitled People, along with a short story. HOA tries to evict me from my own ancestral land. They forgot. My family founded the town. It blew up. Within hours, the post had thousands of upvotes. By morning, it hit the front page. Then the local news called. A reporter from Channel 5 asked if she could come do an interview. I said, hell yes. And the next day, we were standing under the old oak tree, me in my flannel shirt and work boots, holding the original township deed in one hand and the fake eviction notice in the other. The story ran with the headline, "Man Gets Eviction Notice from HOA on His Own Ancestral Land." The fallout was instant. Folks in town started talking. People who'd been bullied by the HOA before, fined for their mailbox color or hounded over lawn height, came out of the woodwork. A few even showed up at my gate with casseroles and handshakes, but it didn't stop there. Russell's team dug into the HOA's expansion proposal. Buried in the paperwork were multiple inconsistencies, altered maps, forged meeting minutes, even backdated zoning requests. It was clear they'd tried to steamroll the county's approval process by faking documentation. A formal complaint was filed with the county planning board. And then, the county launched an investigation into the HOA's board of directors. Suddenly, the tone changed. Where Linda and her clipboard used to strut up to my property like she owned the place, now there was silence. The Lexus stopped showing up. The HOA stopped sending letters. And neighbors from Maple Grove started whispering about emergency board meetings and resignations. They hadn't just poked the bear. They'd poked a bear whose family built the damn forest. And I wasn't done yet. The town meeting was standing room, only they held it in the high school gym, the only place big enough to fit the crowd. Every seat was packed. Local families, Maple Grove residents, council members, reporters, even a few folks who'd driven in from neighboring counties just to see the spectacle. Word had spread fast. The man who got an eviction notice on his own land was about to confront the HOA that sent it. Linda Masterson sat up front, flanked by two other board members. She wore a pastel pantsuit and a strained smile. Her hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt to blink. Her arms were crossed, but the tremble in her foot gave her away. She knew what was coming. She just didn't know how bad it was going to be. The council chair banged the gavel. This hearing has been called to address public concern over actions taken by the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association, specifically related to zoning violations, harassment complaints, and alleged land use fraud. Linda stood. "If I may, Mr. Chairman," she said, voice smooth as margarine left out in the sun. "There's been a lot of misinformation floating around. We never intended any harm. There was simply a misunderstanding with some of the zoning maps. We believed the property in question was part of our future development corridor, and we acted in good faith." Good faith? I stood up, holding a thick folder in one hand and a flash drive in the other. "Lady, you falsified documents, issued a fake eviction notice, and trespassed on land that's been in my family since before your HOA even existed." A murmur rolled through the crowd. I walked to the front, handed the folder to the council clerk, and plugged the flash drive into the projector. "Here's the original township charter," I began, "signed by Thomas Harper, my great-great-grandfather. Here's the protective covenant stating that no commercial or residential development can proceed on these lands without consent from a Harper descendant." I clicked through scanned maps, then and now. "Here's the map you submitted to." The county dated 2 months ago. "And here's the original boundary survey from 1875. Notice anything?" I zoomed in. "You shifted the property lines. You turned private land into a fake green space." Gasps. I turned to the crowd. And, for the record, the land your HOA sits on, especially your house, Ms. Masterson, used to be part of the Harper family orchard. You've been violating a legal covenant for the last 5 years. But we didn't come knocking. We let people live their lives. I paused. You didn't return the favor. Then I played the audio recording. Linda's voice crackled through the speakers. I don't care if he was here before electricity. That property makes us look bad. I'd do anything to get rid of that squatter. The gym went silent. Then came the wave. Gasps, mutters. Someone whispered, "Did she just admit that?" And then one old man near the back let out a laugh that cracked like a whip. "Get her, Jake!" The council didn't take long. They recessed for 20 minutes. When they came back, they dropped the hammer. The town council ruled in my favor unanimously. They recognized the validity of the Harper Covenant, affirmed that my land was outside HOA jurisdiction, and declared the Maple Grove Estates Phase 3 expansion plan indefinitely halted. The HOA was fined $25,000 for overreach in attempting to initiate unapproved construction on protected land. And Linda, she was forced to resign immediately. They didn't even let her walk out the front door. Security escorted her through the side exit, her face blank with shock, like the gravity finally caught up to her. But karma wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, I got word that several Maple Grove homeowners had filed a civil suit against Linda and 2 other board members for misuse of HOA funds, false legal filings, and intentional misrepresentation. Turns out I wasn't the only one they'd screwed over. I was just the one loud enough to fight back. Funny thing is, I never set out to be a hero. I just wanted to live in peace, like my father and grandfather before me. But when someone tries to take what's yours, your name, your blood, your history, you don't just stand there and take it, you fight, and sometimes you win. As I stood on my porch weeks later, watching bulldozers roll away from the edge of my land, I smiled and muttered to myself, funny thing about trying to evict a man from his own land. I ran my hand along the rough wood of the porch rail carved by my dad's hands decades ago. You better hope he ain't the one who built your road. The wood was rough under my palms, sun-warmed and freshly carved, just like my father used to do it. I stood at the edge of the old gravel drive, hammer in hand, and looked up at the new sign swaying gently in the breeze. Welcome to Harper's Hill, Esther 1874, still standing. It felt right, like putting a cornerstone back where it belonged. A few weeks had passed since the town meeting. The lawsuits were still working their way through the courts, but Linda had gone silent. Her for sale sign sat crooked in her pristine front yard, wilting under the weight of a summer sun that didn't care how many bylaws she once wrote. Out here, though, things felt like they used to. A couple of neighborhood kids rode their bikes down my dirt lane last weekend, asked if I still sold fresh eggs like my dad used to. I sent them home with a carton and a smile, no charge. The garden was growing strong. The chickens were clucking like queens, and the old oak still stood tall over the porch, just like always. I thought about my father a lot in those quiet mornings, how he'd always say, "This land isn't just soil, it's memory, and you protect memory like you protect blood." They tried to erase my family's name from the map, tried to redraw it, repave it, and cover it in HOA-approved mulch. Now it's etched in stone, in ink, in headlines, and in that damn sign on the hill. Linda and her HOA forgot who founded this town. Just reminded them,